Services Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda is apologies. Now, I have a few apologies here. I've got one from our chairman. You probably worked that out. I'm not Peter Lavery. So Councillor Lavery has apologised. Olga Murtaugh, the Strategic Director, has apologised, and also Councillor Saoirse McGowan. Have any other apologies? Okay, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Where is my mouse? There. Sorry, members, Ruth stole my mouse. Okay. Right. Okay. Is that all the apologies then? We've got Alderman Wilson as well. Okay. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 2. I propose to just take those as the meeting moves along. And then next item on the agenda is number 3, and that's a report from Head of Planning. So over to you, Damien.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members, I'll briefly take you through the headlines of this relatively detailed report, which relates to the statistical bulletin produced by DFI for Q3 of last year. You will note that the number of applications received across Northern Ireland was approximately 12% down on the same quarter of the previous year. In contrast, the number of applications decided across Northern Ireland was 8% up on the same quarter of the previous year. That pattern was replicated during Q3 within our own council area. The number of applications received was 20% down, while the number of decisions issued was 33% up. Now, that increase in decisions issued is attributable to the commitment and hard work of our staff and to a number of successful changes that have been made to our processes. Regarding performance, members, the council was successful in meeting 2 of its 3 statutory targets during Q3. For major applications, we were the best performing council across Northern Ireland, coming in at first out of the 11 councils with an average processing time of 16.6 weeks. And I'm sure you'd agree, members, that was a great achievement by our staff. For local applications, we were 10th with an average processing time of 23 weeks. And while that was disappointing, members will be aware of the operational challenges that COVID has presented for local applications. And those challenges, you may be interested to know, that during Q3, in spite of those challenges, we issued the 4th highest number of decisions across all councils. Members may also wish to note that only 3 of the 11 councils managed to meet the target for local applications during the first 3 quarters of last year. And those councils received significantly fewer applications than ourselves. In respect of enforcement, we were the 4th best performer of the 11 councils, concluding 81% of our enforcement cases within 39 weeks, which significantly exceeded the 70% target. And again, that's a very positive outcome. Members, in the context of this report, it's appropriate to mention that a service review workshop is scheduled to take place on the 30th of May, and that workshop officers propose to discuss a range of measures for improving performance over the course of the current business year. It's also appropriate to mention that and give you the assurance as well that officers are continually monitoring and reviewing our systems, structures and processes with a view to assisting economic recovery and faster processing times. Thank you, Chair, and happy to take any questions, members.
Thank you, Damien. And it was a very comprehensive report, and I have to say, stats were great to read, and it is because of the protocols and procedures you put in place and obviously the hard work of the staff. And I suppose from the committee, I want you to sort of obviously, extend that thanks to the staff. We do appreciate that it's been a difficult time, and hopefully we're now seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of work away. And as you point out yourself, our stats are good in relation to 2 out of 3 of the targets. So, and the local applications, again, we appreciate the issues there, but obviously things are going the right direction. So, look, Damien, I appreciate, I have a couple of other speakers here, but just wanted to record that. Damien, just my thanks, and obviously the thanks to the committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, really just to reiterate everything you've said there, I think in the circumstances in particular, I think this is a very worthy report, and I think we deserve to congratulate the head of planning and all his staff. And I think it is important that we do acknowledge that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Twyvell. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair. Thank you for letting me in. And it's just to first of all concur with yourself and with Alderman Twyvell in terms of expressing our thanks to council staff. And I suppose the substantive point that I want to raise is just on the enforcement piece. Damien talked about 81% were within the 39 weeks. I suppose the first question would be, at what point does that process start? And the other question would be, are there many outliers, as in going longer than that within the process at this moment? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Damien, do you want to address that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, members, for your kind words. And turning to that particular query, Councillor McClellan, yes, the enforcement clock, if you like, starts to run as soon as the enforcement case is opened. So we receive a complaint by whoever that party is, and we open the case, and then that's when the clock will start. Regarding number of cases that we have in excess of 400 enforcement cases at the moment. What we found was during lockdown enforcement, the number of complaints around enforcement did significantly rise. And we think that was due to the fact that a lot of people were furloughed and had more time to be out and about looking at the environment and finding things that they felt the need to report to us. So that has happened. We have added some resource to the enforcement team to ensure that we are managing the caseload. So the numbers are high, but continue to meet the target though. And so we are confident that we will go the right way in terms of driving our numbers down by continuing to hit the statutory target for enforcement.
Thank you, Damien. See, Councillor McLeod, do you want to come back in?
Yeah. Yeah, Chair, if you could just indulge me with a quick supplementary. Obviously, Damien, in your answer, you mentioned during lockdown, so there's obviously quite a significant number of those 400 cases are above the 39 weeks, given that it's more than 39 weeks since lockdown started. That's an obvious assumption, I take it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Damien, do you want to come back in again?
Yeah, certainly the numbers rose during then. Now, I wouldn't say that the majority of those did back to, the early stages of lockdown, but I suppose if you're looking at what lockdown covers, I mean, I'm including that right up until, I suppose, fairly recently, but certainly up until around the end of 2021. So that would be the period that I would be referring to.
Okay, thank you, Damien. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Damien, for the report. And I too would concur with the comments already made by the members and the Chairman in relation to the work that's being done by your department here. Just you commented there about targeting resource maybe to the enforcement team. And it's the usual questions probably asked every meeting here is, how are we getting along with the filling of vacancies, or are we still targeting overtime to try and catch up? It's just more or less the current update that I was asking for. I mean, are we making inroads there? Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Damien?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alderman Anderson. In relation to vacancies, we currently have a vacancy rate of around 12% within the department. We have 5 vacant posts, 1 long-term sickness absence. Now, within the vacant posts, 3 of those are planners, 2 are admin. But the admin section works very closely with our planning staff, so they're an integral part of the overall function. We are working extremely close with human resources to fill those posts. Very often what happens, members, is you're successful in maybe filling 1 post, but it's filled internally, which creates a vacancy somewhere else, and you're no better off in terms of your staff and numbers. But there's obviously nothing we can do about that. That's part of the process, and we have to roll with that. Members will recall that back last year we got additional funding to recruit 5 additional planners for 12 months. We've been successful in appointing 3 of those 5. They're very difficult to get. You know, we appoint someone, we go back to them, and then suddenly they're not interested in the post anymore. So it's very challenging for us, but we have 3 of the 5 appointed. We're continuing to try and recruit the other 2. And with regard to the vacant posts and the long-term sickness absence posts, as I mentioned earlier, we are working very closely with human resources to try and to recruit and fill those posts.
Thank you, Damien. Alderman Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Damien, for that update. I suppose my next question would be, are we able, with the overtime being done, to maybe fill up the hours for the vacant posts? Or are we still sort of lagging behind there and trying to catch up on making inroads? I have to say, you have 3 filled, and that's very, very positive. So hopefully we'll get the other 2 on the admin. You're sort of able to work through that. But are we able to use this overtime on our staff doing the overtime to maybe fill in this sort of space that we have at this time? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alderman Anderson. Yeah, the overtime we used last year, I think, remember explaining to members when we first made use of overtime, it was to try and keep a lid on the numbers so that when we recruited the additional planners, we could start to drive the numbers down. Now, we used the overtime with $2,000 of overtime last year, and through that overtime, we issued around 430 decisions. So it was extremely useful to us, but it came to an end at the end of the financial year because the money was, we were able to use money because we had so many vacant posts. There was money spare that we could use for overtime purposes. We're into a new financial year and we don't have that position currently, but it is certainly one that we can continue to monitor and review in consultation with finance. And if, you know, if our vacancy rates don't improve and the money might be there, we could certainly make use of it again, because it's a very good way of us trying to drive our numbers down, which is the direction of travel.
Okay, thank you, Damien. Of Councillor Duffy here. Councillor Duffy.
Hello. All right, Damien. Thank you, and thanks to your team for the report and all the good work they're doing. Damien, are we training any planners up, you know, from junior, from college, university, or taking them direct out of there and training them through?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, this is something that council-wide it's being looked at the moment. It's looking, for example, at, you know, apprenticeship schemes, you know, taking students in and so on. There's that work going within the council to look at what might be done in that area, because there is an issue here of trying to get the right staff at the right time. So that is an option that we are giving some thought to. But there's still some additional work to be done on that. But all options are on the table here in terms of how we can be more successful in our recruitment exercise. Because very often you do go out to interview and you don't get a successful candidate, or you appoint and then suddenly the person doesn't take the job, but you have nobody on a reserve list. So yeah, all options are on the table, including what you mentioned, Councillor Duffy. Yeah.
Okay, Damien, thank you. Thank you, members. And moving on, we're in agenda item number 4, and that's a report from the Head of Building Control. Tom? All right. Oh, sorry, apologies. Have you another? section. Sorry, Damien. Apologies.
Thanks, Chair. No, member, sorry, this is an update just on live caseloads, but there is an element of this that you might have some interest in. So look, you'll see from the report before you that the number of decisions issued during April was 98, which is a relatively low number, members, but to take into account that there was the Easter holiday period in the middle of that. Number of applications received in April was 123. And the number of live applications now stands at just over 1,000. It's 1,095. Number of call-ins in April was 7. And with regard to the number of live cases, members, you'll note that this is significantly down on last month's figure, which was just over 1,400. Now, the reason for that significant reduction is explained in the report, but in summary, it's the result of a new administrative process that was introduced at the beginning of lockdown. Members will recall at the beginning of lockdown, the planning offices were closed for a period of time. And when they reopened, a manual count of applications that were received and registered was introduced at that time in the interest of ensuring that live caseload numbers were being recorded as accurately and robustly as possible. Now, as part of a recent review undertaken of the development management function and caseloads, officers identified that the planning portal was also counting applications that were registered but not validated. So there was an element of double counting. Now, the review was undertaken in order to investigate, and the review was undertaken to investigate the difference between the portal figures and those that we had been reporting. Now, the initial discrepancy between the two sets of figures would have been relatively small. We're looking at probably about 8 per month. But over time, that difference increased and became a bigger number, which led us to investigate what the issue was. An accurate caseload figure is now identified, and that's one reported to you today, members, of 1,095. But I appreciate you may have some queries around that, and I'm happy to take those. But in a way, I would just give you assurance, it's a good news story. The numbers are actually lower than what they had been reported. The reason for the double counting, it was part of a process that was introduced to try and give you and ourselves a robust and as accurate a picture of the planning numbers that came in during the time that the offices were closed back in the first quarter of 2020-21. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Damien, and apologies for moving on too quickly. But no, I think I agree with you, Damien. That is a good news story, because I think we're sort of thought we're looking down the barrel of 1,442, but actually it's 1,085. So I do think, you know, it's a bit of good news today. So, Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair. It absolutely is good news. And I suppose the question that I would have is, how does all of this interface with the new planning portal and so on, and in terms of the time scale on the rolling out of that, please, maybe as a supplementary. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Councillor McClellan. Yeah, look, the whole objective of the new planning portal is to give us an IT system that's fit for purpose and that's set up for the new two-tier planning system and not the one that was in existence prior to transfer. So, you know, we would expect that issues like this wouldn't arise. Now, the old system, there was a facility within it which wasn't evident by any means, which allowed the planning portal to record applications that were registered and validated. Officers weren't aware of that. So for robustness purposes, we were counting manually the registered ones and adding them to the ones in the portal which were valid. But as I explained earlier, that's how to count. There was an element of counting, but it was really for purposes of trying to give us an accurate picture of numbers. But answer to your question, yeah, look forward to the new IT system later this year, which hopefully will avoid that sort of problem happening.
Thank you, Damien. And I suppose one good thing is we're getting close to that magic 850 number. We've just knocked about 400 off it there. So no, it's that's good, because if the figures keep going the way they're going, we'll be down there sooner rather than later. Okay, members, I've no more lights on. Damien, if that's you complete, I'm now going to go to Tom, agenda item 4, which is a report from the head of building control. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Item 4.1 is decision item, members. It's a request for the naming of a housing development consisting of 15 dwellings, and the site's located off the Gilmanstown Road in Lurgan. Maps are in Appendix 1, and as members will see, the applicant's preferred name for the development is Old Forest Lane, and the applicant's reason for the preferred name is that the site is situated in the Shankle Ward, and one of the original meanings of the Shankle Ward is Old Forest. So officers have assessed and deemed it to be appropriate, and the recommendation therefore is for members' approval. But I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, members, you've heard the report. Any questions? Alderman Twyber.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Just very happy to propose the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor or Alderman Twyber. Councillor Duffy.
Just going to second the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Okay, members, we've got a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation. All agreed? Great. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Item 4.2.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 4.2 is for information. A signed petition has been received by the council requesting to rename and renumber a section of the Greenmore Road in Katy to Old School Lane. As members will see in the Appendix 2, this is the particular section is shaded in pink, and it's a tail end off the main Greenmore Road. So in accordance with the council's policy, officers have confirmed that the names in the petition against the electoral register and the minimum 1/3 number of signatures has been confirmed by those living on the road. So at this point, the council shall now survey all persons affected by the proposed naming and numbering and seeking their opinions. If the result of the survey shows that at least 2/3 of the residents are in agreement with the proposed name change and renumbering, then a report will be brought before this committee for consideration of the actual name change. Again, sure, this is for information, but I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, members, you've heard Tom. Are you happy to note, or is there any questions? Oh, Alderman Twyber.
This delay is an awful hindrance, really. But I just wanted to ask Tom, is there any reason why they want to change? I mean, this is part of that lane. There's no map to show anything, but from what the report says, it's the bottom part of the lane or bottom part of the road. So is there any reason why part of the road would want to change its name? That we would even consider the process of it?
Thanks, Alderman Twyber, but I know the road quite well myself, and the main Greenmore Road, this is a roadway off it, and it is quite long. So, look, Tom, do you want to address that?
Happy to address that. Yes, yes. As Chair pointed out, the main Greenmore Road is quite. This is a tail end off it. It's quite a long and straggling tail end, and actually splits at one end of it. And strangely enough, at the far end of this tail, there is a house actually which is named off the adjacent road. So it's a bit of a dolly mixture of addresses down that road. And the local residents said it has caused confusion for years for postal services because it is such a meandering tail. And there was an old school down there, so that's why they want to rename it. They feel it'll be much simpler if it's renamed. So the petition at this point in time has quite a gathering. And so hopefully the survey will reflect that as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Tom, and I suppose we just let the process take its time and we'll see what happens. Okay, members, no more questions on that item? No? Okay, we'll move on then to 4.3. Again, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. This is just to keep members up to date with some of the workload undertaken by the department. And notably, members will see Appendix 2. Last month alone, we received 237 new applications. These had a notional construction investment value in the area of just over 11.25 million. During this month of April, we undertook 177 plan assessments and issued statutory notices on all of these. We also, during that month, completed just over 1,148 site inspections. And also the department continues to deliver the property certificate function. Last month alone, we received and administered 277 new applications, and we issued actually 366 certificates to solicitors and agents all related to property sales. Thank you, Chair. This is for information, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, members, any questions? See no lights on. Happy to note? Okay, agree to note. Okay, thank you, members, and thank you, Tom. I think that's the end of your report. And members, we're agenda item number 5, and we're going into confidential. So I seek a proposer and a seconder. Proposed by Alan Anderson, seconded by Councillor Savage. Okay. Members, I have to read this following statement out as we, is the live feed stopped? No, did I read this before the live? Okay, no problem. Okay, members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, in brackets exempt information, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the Council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask the ICT officers to please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Okay, members, we're back live. So in continuing the agenda for the meeting, we're on agenda item number 7, and it's correspondence. And we have got 2 letters. Obviously one from Ards North Down, and then obviously the reply from the Department of Infrastructure, which I know Damien's going to give us a bit of an update on. Thank you, Damien.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the first letter, members, it's from, as the Chair said, from Ards North Down to DFI. And basically it's asking DFI to implement legislation that would enable old minerals planning permissions to be renewed. And the whole purpose of that is because a lot of these minerals permissions go back to as far as the 1960s. The purpose of renewing them is so that they can be assessed against current environmental standards. And so Ards North Down have asked the Minister to bring forward the legislation to make this happen. And as well as that, they've asked the Minister to commit to DFI handling such applications. DFI's response is attached, and you'll see from it that the Minister is saying that, in her opinion, the new legislation should be brought forward in the new mandate, so it'll be sometime later this year. Doesn't say it will, but should be. And then also goes on to say that it won't be DFI handling it, it will be for councils to handle. So it's not the answer that Ards North Down would have liked, it's not the answer any of us would have liked. But if that remains the case, members will be aware of the reports that have come out over the last few months from the Northern Ireland Audit Office, the Public Accounts Committee, all of which acknowledge that there is a financial sustainability issue around planning and there is a funding issue around planning. So how councils are going to take on this additional responsibility in that context, there is an issue there. There will be cross-government working groups and ongoing discussions in the context of those reports about how all the recommendations made by those bodies are to be taken account of. And perhaps that's the vehicle for raising this issue with DFI to see how it could be resolved in council's favours. So that would be, my thoughts on the matter, members, but welcome any thoughts of your own or comments at all. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Damien. And I suppose, like yourself, the last thing we need is a load of new applications coming in that should have been dealt with by someone else. And I suppose, would these applications potentially be seen as regionally significant and therefore they would have to be dealt with by the department? That would be my question first. But for yourself, Damien, and then I'll open to the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, that is a possibility. I mean, it depends which category of development they end up falling into. That we'd have to review for minerals permissions. For major, they have to be over, the site has to be over 2 hectares in size. Now, whether it constitutes, I don't think minerals permissions can be deemed to be reasonably significant. But that is something that one of the issues that come out of the whole audit review and the review by the Public Accounts Committee is that what the Department for Infrastructure have to do is review how applications are categorised. So that would include what classifies a reasonably significant application. So DFI will have to review that. Now, that may result in some of these becoming reasonably significant applications where DFI could take them on. But I think what DFI are trying to do is basically pass them across to councils and avoid having to process these themselves. But there's a discussion to be had around this in the whole context of the reports that I mentioned. And maybe that is the appropriate forum in which to have this conversation. And I'm happy to take it forward along those lines if that's what members' preference is.
Thank you, Damien. And I do think that discussion needs to happen. Obviously, other members are open to speak on it, but from personally, I think this is, again, another way the department by stealth is basically putting more work on our planning department, which obviously, as we know, is still recovering from COVID, still trying to get our numbers down to, deal with those applications that are, economically and significant for the area, job creation and things. So these types of things, I think it just needs to be a discussion. We'll leave that with you, Damien, obviously in your capable hands, cross-departmental, that, you will obviously put across the feelings. I know how other members feel about it, but I'll open it to the floor. Any comments?
Chair,
Nope.
maybe if I could come in, sorry, Chair. If members would prefer, I mean, we could write to DFI ourselves to, concur with the thoughts of Ards and North Down and say that, we would agree with the approach that they have suggested and would ask DFI to take that into consideration. If members would like, like that to be done, I'm happy to draft a letter and send to them. It'd probably be sent by yourself, Chair, if you're happy to do that. Just a suggestion.
Damien, yeah, totally agree. That would be a useful suggestion, I think, and I'm happy to propose that you do write to DFI and outline the sort of concerns we have as a committee, in relation to this additional potential of having to deal with these, mineral type applications, which again, should be dealt with, centrally rather than at a local level. Okay, anybody happy to second that? Alderman Twyble, okay. So Damien's going to write a letter, okay, to the DFI.
The Ards and North Down Council in on that letter, just send it along, just copy them into it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, Alderman Anderson, absolutely. They should be. Yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea actually copying all councils, and that. So maybe people haven't really realised what is potentially in front of them. I'm sure you have a forum, Damien, where you speak to other heads of planning as well.
Yeah.
You can bring it up in it and have that discussion.
Yeah, can do, Chair, yeah.
Okay, Damien, thank you. And thank you, members. That's the end of correspondence. Obviously, the next item on the agenda is agenda item number 9, which is any other relevant business that we're not aware of any. Ruth is saying no, so there is none. So, okay, members, that's the end of the first part of the meeting. We're going to be a short recess, and then we'll consider the planning applications, and we'll commence at 4 o'clock, members. That gives you 18 minutes, yeah? 4 o'clock. Okay, members. Okay, got the thumbs up there, members. Okay, members, before starting, I'm going to leave out this, read this statement. Members of the public, you're advised that the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee is being held in the Council Chamber in Craigavon Civic Centre. However, due to COVID restrictions, the number of persons who can physically be facilitated in the chamber is severely limited. As a result, members of the public are only able to view the meeting on YouTube. And anyone wishing to address the committee has been invited, and in the first instance as an attendee via Zoom. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anybody participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed to YouTube. Also, during the course of this meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are members of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee of Planning Officers, applicants for planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain the information which they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether an application should be approved, refused, or deferred until the debate of the application has concluded. Okay, members, first item on agenda number 6, I'll have Councillor Savage here was laid on. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to declare an interest in this application. I called it in and I've also spoke to the applicant's family and also planned about it, so I'll step out of the room for this one, Chair, okay?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Savage. So we'll make a start when you leave the chamber. Okay, members, the first application, appendix number 1, is application number LA08 2020 0897/0. And I've got Liam McCrum, who's a senior planning officer, who's going to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Okay, Liam.
Thank you, Chair. This application is an application for outline planning permission for an infill dwelling on lands adjacent to 14 Upper Town Road, Kittsbridge. The application is before members, as has been called in by an elected member. This application site lies in the open countryside as defined in the area plan. There are no specific policies in the area plan for this form of development. This application falls to be considered under the SPPS and PPS 21, specifically policies CTY1 and CTY8. One of these policies, CTY8, requires 4 specific elements to be met. The first is that the gap site must be within an otherwise substantial and continuously built up frontage. The second is that the gap must be small, sufficient only to accommodate a maximum of 2 houses. The third, the existing pattern of development along the frontage must be respected. And the fourth is that other planning and environmental requirements must be met. In this instance, officers are satisfied that the site is located within a substantial and continuously built up frontage, and therefore criterion 1 of CTY8 is met. Officers are also satisfied that the site represents a small gap sufficient only to accommodate a maximum of 2 dwellings, therefore criterion 2 of CTY8 is met. Furthermore, officers are content that the proposed dwelling could be sited within the application site respecting the existing pattern of development along the frontage. Therefore, the third element of CTY8 is satisfied. In regard to the fourth criteria, the site lies in close proximity to existing poultry farm, which is located to the rear of number 14 Upper Town Road. Officers in consultation with officers from the Council Environmental Health Department have concern regarding this relationship in terms of amenity afforded to the proposed dwelling. The Environmental Health Department of the Council had raised concerns with the potential impact of the existing poultry farm on the amenity of future occupants of the proposed dwelling. The proposed development is located approximately 100 metres from the existing poultry sheds. The Environmental Health had advised the activities from these sheds are likely to give rise to offensive conditions and resulting impact upon the amenity enjoyed by occupiers of the proposed development due to noise, odour and flies. In addition to this, the proposed development is also surrounded by other agricultural buildings, all within 75 metres of the proposed development, which will also give rise to adverse impacts due to noise, odour and pests. Officers are of the opinion that the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed development would provide an acceptable living environment for the prospective residents in terms of noise and odour. The proposed development therefore fails the fourth element of CTY8 policy consideration. As set out in detail in the body of the officer's report, officers are content that the proposed development would comply with the SPPS and policy CTY 13 and 14 in terms of design, integration and impact on rural character. In consultation with DFI Roads, officers are content that a satisfactory access arrangement can be achieved on site. Officers are also satisfied that a modest dwelling could be accommodated on the site in compliance with PPS 15 in respect of flooding and drainage. The third-party objections received are set out in detail in the report. The refusal is recommended. Officers would just remind members that you will know from the planning report that there is a material planning history here of a similar application that was refused planning permission for the same reason back in 2019. Let me just take you through the PowerPoint. So this is just a location of our site within the general area up on Upper Town Roads off the main Catesbridge roads out of Banbridge. This is our site location plan. You can see our site in red and the land zone in blue. This is just a blown up version of that, and you can see our poultry sheds to the rear. This is just an aerial photograph of the site for a bit more clarification purposes. You can see the site annotated. You can see the two agricultural buildings, one on either side of the road immediately adjacent to the site, and you can see the large poultry sheds to the back of number 14. This is just a view of the application site from the frontage on Upper Town Road. This is a view of the adjacent dwelling at number 14, and you can just about make out some of the buildings, agricultural buildings and the poultry sheds to the rear. That's just a view across the frontage of number 14, looking to the application site, which is sort of where the R is behind those trees. This is the adjacent agricultural shed to the other boundary of the application site that houses cattle. And these are other agricultural buildings on the opposite side of the road. And again, that's just a view from the access to the poultry houses that are located some distance behind number 14, and you can just see on the right-hand side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liam, for your presentation on the PowerPoint. Okay, members, in the chamber today, we're joined by Mr. Oisin Conlon, who's going to make a representation in support of the application. Mr. Conlon, you're very, very welcome. You've got 3 minutes. You'll see them on the screen in front of you, and that will start when you begin to speak. But before you start, I just want to tell the members that we've also got Seamus Curran here, who's the applicant, and Herbie McAleer, who's the agent, who are basically have got speaking rights. So I'm assuming that's to address any queries, and that can't be addressed. Okay, Mr. Conlon, your time will start when you begin to speak. Thank you.
And odour weren't adequately addressed during the original planning process. The applicant subsequently engaged with environmental health and undertook a detailed review of all of the documents as part of that application and the poultry farm that you've heard about. So key findings and key points raised with environmental health at that time were that the application of the poultry farm itself, the source of the potential noise and odour, was supported by a detailed farm management plan detailing how noise and odour would be managed to prevent impact. The farm operations itself are also, including odour and noise, are regulated by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency via a specific pollution prevention control permit. And with regards to potential impact on residential amenity, the planning officer report for the poultry house stated the NIA, the body responsible for the investigation of any noise or odour complaint, offered no objection to the proposal. It was considered that this proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the amenity of nearby residential dwellings, and further stated that environmental health have been consulted in relation to the proposal and to the odour assessment in particular, and have raised no concerns. There were no odour or noise related conditions included in the planning permission for the poultry houses. The proposed development that we're talking about is no closer to the farm than the existing residential properties, and NIA and both environmental health concluded that the farm would not have a detrimental impact on residential dwellings. It also pointed out that the prevailing wind is from the south and west, So the potential for noise and odour to extend from the poultry houses towards the proposed development is considered much less than to the existing residential properties. That was acknowledged by Environmental Health on the 6th of March 2020. Taking into account that information, they advised that they would not intend, if there was a subsequent application asking for an odour impact assessment to be submitted. So a subsequent application was made, which we're talking about today. Environmental Health responded on the 1st of the 2nd, 21, and they advised that the prevailing wind provides natural mitigation for the proposal with dispersion of noise and odour. Therefore, the department does not require a noise or odour impact assessment. It further marked in the planning response checklist attached to that response and it marked a general amenity and air quality as not applicable to this development. There was a follow-up response then on the 21st of the 12th, 21, in which the Environmental Health stated it is assumed that the applicant is aware of the close proximity to the agricultural sheds, and goes on to say that should planning permission be granted, Environmental Health would request that informatives are included to remind the applicant of the potential for noise and odour. But importantly, Environmental Health did not recommend refusal on the grounds of odour or noise, and didn't even recommend any related conditions. There was then a third response. This is the final response from Environmental Health.
Sorry, Mr. Collin, your time's up, but look, I'm sure we'll tease this, the rest of it out as the meeting progresses, because obviously this is a very sort of technical one. I can tell by your statement in relation to that. So look, thank you for your presentation to the committee. Okay, members, you've heard Liam's presentation, and you've obviously heard the presentation from Mr. Conlon. Online, members, we also do have Paul McCullough from Environmental Health. So if there's anybody has any questions for Paul, he's there. Okay, members, I'm opening the floor for questions, and we've got Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to hear the third and possibly if there's any more responses.
Just for clarification, you want me to allow Mr. Conlon to continue and finish the last of his presentation? Okay, Mr. Conlon, if you just want to finish up, as Councillor Duffy has asked to hear the full presentation, so I'll let you back in and you can finish off the rest of your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it was just to summarise the key points. So those being odour and noise were not considered problematic when the poultry farm was initially approved. No related conditions were included. A detailed management plan is in place and was submitted in support of the planning for that farm, specifically for preventing adverse noise and odour. Farm operations from the poultry farm, including noise and odour, are already strictly regulated by the Environment Agency via a specific PPC permit. So failure to regulate those farm operations should not be to the detriment of the applicant. And the statutory experts in NIA and Environmental Health have not recommended refusal or even conditions related to noise, odour or pests. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Conlon. Okay, Councillor Duffy, you've heard see your light on, I'll let you back in.
Yes, Chair, thank you, and thank you to Mr. Conlon. I'd like to hear from Environmental Health on that there now that these quality reports and all weren't required, and how come they come to a decision against the proposal when all this material wasn't required?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy. Paul, can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Chair?
We can indeed, loud and clear, Paul. So if you want to address, obviously you've heard what Mr. Conlon has said, and if you want to address those issues that have been raised by Councillor Duffy, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, Chair and Councillor. Obviously, the environmental health role is to advise the planning department to aid them towards making a decision. And we have identified that there is a potential impact with any residential property going in beside in agricultural uses of this type. It's for the planning department, obviously, to take that information and to make a balanced decision on the basis of that. So there has been a chain of consultations, as has been identified by Mr. Conlon. As I say, Environmental Health have raised the locality issues within that. In terms of the stepping back towards the poultry house application itself, it is true that there are controls in place and a regime in place for that. However, a lot of those controls would have only taken into account the receptors that were present at the time and wouldn't obviously have had regard to the future potential of this particular application.
Okay, thank you, Paul, for your reply. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair, again. Thank you, Paul. Was not mitigation in that part of Annex A towards the end of that report that comes out about mitigation within plan, that these sort of things could be mitigated through what has been said by Mr. Conlon, through wind and through the environmental agencies' reports on pests and other types of flies and all within the area? Is just for Liam, is it not part of the thing that mitigation should have been, and was it entered into with the applicant that the poultry sheds could have been mitigated out of through pests, through smell?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy. Liam, do you want to address that?
Yeah, well, I suppose the starting point, if we're reverting back to the application for the poultry houses are located immediately adjacent behind the owner of the poultry houses. That was the closest residential property at number 14. This site wasn't investigated as part of the application into the poultry houses. The other properties are further away. In that respect, yes, there are regulations in relation to how the poultry sheds are managed and maintained through the NIEA. I think what we're looking at in terms of amenity here is something slightly different. And in that it's a proximity of that and how that relates to it. How they manage and maintain the facility is certainly one aspect of it, but I don't think it goes to the level and extent that we need to be considered in terms of residential amenity, and that's what this application is solely falling down on. So yeah, the application site wasn't investigated for a residential property back when the poultry houses were approved. It simply wasn't there. And the closest residential receptor is the owner of the poultry houses at number 14.
Okay, thank you, Liam. And I suppose that's something we hear in the committee all the time. You have to deal with what's in front of you. And at the time, obviously, that this wasn't on the plans. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Liam. What is the distance a property from agricultural sheds or poultry sheds that is recommended by the environmental agency?
Thanks. Councillor Duffy. Liam, do you want to?
Yeah, the recommendation is that they should be located a minimum of 150 metres from non-associated dwellings. That's reflected in the consultation response from Environmental Health. And this is 100 metres.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Councillor Duffy.
Just one last question, Liam. Was this on the delegated list for approval last summer? Did I see it?
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Liam?
Yeah, basically there was back in the day when we had the advice note come out, the name of it has just left me, in relation to infill policy tests, and basically we didn't count garages as part of the So basically this application was held up in line with that advice that came out of planning headquarters at one point in time. What was it called? Yeah, the plan, sorry, I've just gone blank on. Yeah, so the plan advice came out, and basically we were sitting on applications of this nature because we weren't sure what was happening with it and whether or not this actually ticked the box from the infill point of view. So when that was withdrawn, then it did tick the box in terms of the infill point of view. But when we looked at the environmental health consultation response we had when it was added to the delegated list, we didn't feel we could stand over it. So yes, it was added to a list, but a decision was never taken on it, because when we fully investigated the environmental health response we had, we couldn't issue an approval on that basis. And that's why there has been a number of to and fro in terms of environmental consultation responses coming back.
Okay. Thanks, Liam. Councillor, are you happy enough? The minute, yeah. Okay, I've got Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. The 150 metres, is that policy or is that a guide? The other question would be reference to environmental health. Just within my sort of the day-to-day job, I visit 2 probably large poultry farms probably daily. And I know the biosecurity measures on poultry farms probably greatly outweighs other livestock that's being kept, sort of a sheep, cattle or whatever. Odour is minimal, if any. Noise, I personally could not hear the sound of chickens at any poultry farm that I visit. I think maybe sometimes this is maybe a broad brush approach. Has the farm been visited? Has any sort of readings been taken or any sort of monitoring of the situation? I think maybe this is something we really have to look at as regards the noise and odour situation. As we know, out the country, you have odours from slurry spread and you have various odours out there. So it's something that's not going to be avoided completely within a rural location. So there's a couple of wee questions I would like to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Liam, do you want to address those or?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson. My understanding is this is guidance that is worked off from the Environmental Health Department and has been accepted by the Planning Appeals Commission. I suppose the other point in regard to this application, there were no odour assessments, noise assessments or any other assessments submitted in support of the application, which may have shed a bit more light on the specific conditions of the application site. But my understanding was the site was visited multiple times by Environmental Health, but I suppose Paul can clarify that a bit further.
Thanks, Liam. Paul, do you want to add to what Liam said there?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Wilson was asking.
Just to reiterate, Liam's exactly correct. It is guidance. There is no specific policy on this matter. The Environment Agency in England and the former Department for Agriculture, as it was, would have worked off a guidance figure of 400 metres. We have reduced that down based upon many years accumulated knowledge and experience down to 150 metres, just given the local circumstances that we find in Northern Ireland. In relation to the specific site itself, look, whilst there are general trends within poultry developments, there are individual specifics on each site. There is ventilation noise associated with developments of that type. Also noise due to sort of deliveries and indeed the processing and removal of birds and so on. So there can be impacts associated with them. We do have a very high standard in this part of the world in terms of poultry industry. So as I say, that's why we in our guidance have reduced the 400 metre separation distance down to 150, which we think is applicable.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Councillor Wilson, that addressed your, okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Duffy, your light's on again, so obviously something is come into your head?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. No, I just want to ask Mr. Conlon again. I thought he said that none of these reports were required when they had brought it up, that they weren't necessary. Their quality reports and stuff. Could he clarify that, please?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Mr. Conlon, do you want to address that? Why those reports weren't part of this application, or were they asked for, or whatever?
The original application, there was a request for an odour assessment that hadn't been adequately responded to. That's acknowledged by the applicant, as I said in the start of the presentation. We subsequently engaged with environmental health and pointed out all of those points that I presented earlier. Environmental health agreed that if there was a subsequent application that we are now talking about, that neither a noise or odour assessment would be required.
Okay, Mr. Conlon, thank you. That deal with that, Councillor Duffy. Okay, I've got Councillor McAlinden on Zoom here. Here's Declan.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks and apologies. I'm working from home here, but this application seems to hinge on the noise and odour assessment. Liam, you mentioned the previous application back in 2019. Could you give us more detail on that there? Thanks, Liam.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAlinden. Liam, did you get that? Yeah. Okay, I'll hand over Liam.
Yeah, Councillor McAlinden, the previous application was essentially the same as what we have before us this evening. The reasons for refusal, again, were based on amenity grounds and lack of information. I suppose in the context of that application, the applicants were made aware of the potential need for odour and noise assessments. They weren't submitted. Subsequent to that, out with the planning process, the agent did engage with environmental health, but not through a planning application. So basically the position was that they did have some conversations with environmental health before the submission of the application we're currently here to adjudicate on this evening. But in the context of this application and an officer's looking at the various consultation responses we have received to date on the application, some of which we didn't really allow us to proceed, we felt. So we felt that they needed interrogated a bit more. So in light of some of the 3 different consultation responses we received from environmental health, we finally got one we felt that was robust enough for us to take the application forward to planning committee. And realistically, that's why we're here this evening. So essentially the applications are more or less similar, except that there was ongoing negotiations out with the submission of the current application with environmental health, and that was forwarded to us in the context of this application.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Liam. Declan, are you happy enough for that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Duffy, your lights on again. We're going to let Oliver Anderson in just in front of you here. He hasn't asked anything yet, so Oliver Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I've been listening intently to this. And it revolves around the noise and the odour, basically. We in the past as a committee have probably, and maybe Liam could clarify this, worked within the limits that we're talking about within this report today on the agricultural buildings and such like. So we have to see it not light. Although there's nothing definite from Paul, he says it's a figure to go on, the 150 metres and less. But coming back, am I picking this up right from Oisin that you weren't asked on this occasion by environmental health for an odour or noise assessment? And if that is the case, we're actually having this before us today. Basically, it's because of those situations that we have this decision before us to refuse this site. So maybe Paul and Ocean could come forward and tell us, do we still need an odour or noise assessment? And if not, why not? When we're really trying to determine what the issues are here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Paul, do you want to come in first, and then I'll invite Mr. Conlon.
Yes, Chair. I'll try and clarify it as best as possible. This site, given its proximity to the poultry and other agricultural activities, will be impacted. We know that based upon our knowledge and experience of such sites and the fact that it lies well within what we would deem to be the appropriate guidance limits. A noise and indeed odour impact assessment will undoubtedly reveal that to some extent, and you'll still be in the same situation of asking yourself whether it's an acceptable impact or not. With regards to the residential development, then clearly it doesn't have the operational control of the sources here. Whereas if you were looking obviously at the development of a new agricultural facility, then there are various mitigation measures that can be put in place. It is much more difficult for a residential property to try and seek to control any impacts like that. So that is where we find ourselves. As I say, Environmental Health have put forward the recommendation, the advices, that it is our view that it will be a site impacted by noise and odour from the adjacent activities. And as I said, you've got a plan recommendation from as a result of that.
Okay, thank you, Paul, for your feedback there. And I'm going to invite Mr. Conlon. You've heard obviously what the Environmental Health Officer said there. Do you want to sort of give a reply?
Yes, thanks. As pointed out in the presentation, there was no request for a noise or odour assessment based on the information that had been presented to Environmental Health. The recommendation is to include an informative, making the applicant aware that there is potential for noise and odour, but no recommendation for refusal, nor recommendation, or recommendation for inclusion of conditions related to noise or odour.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Conlon. I see Alderman Anderson's light on, so you've heard obviously what Mr. McCullough and Mr. Conlon said. So Alderman Anderson.
Thank you again, Chair, and thanks to both gentlemen for those responses. Mr. Conlon mentioned something last about informatives, but they're not, informatives are not really conditions. They're not something that could be, maybe you could correct me, Liam, that you can put something on an approval with an informative, but it doesn't have much standing. Just could you clarify that first, please?
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Liam, do you want to sort of outline the difference between a condition and an informative, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Essentially, what the consultation response from Environmental Health is flagging up is that there will be an impact here. An informative will not mitigate that. And as the applicant has no control over the source in this instance, which is the poultry sheds and the adjacent agricultural buildings, they have no means of mitigating to an acceptable level that would not have implications for residential amenity of these prospective residents. That's quite clearly set out in the consultation, the most recent consultation response. That's what officers have interrogated from that. And on that basis, that's why we have the application before us with a recommendation to refuse.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Okay, Alderman, thank you. Councillor Duffy.
one last question. Chair, the 3 previous responses from Environmental Health, were they of the same light, or was there any major differences in the responses? I know it took, but really what I'm hearing is 4 goes to say no, but were the 3 previous ones, was any of them saying yes, or why weren't they attached to this report? Or?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy. I'm going to ask Liam if you want to outline or the previous responses.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yeah, essentially there was a bit of variance in the responses that we had received from Environmental Health. The first one, as the agent has alluded to there, did say no objections when we looked at it as officers, as the sort of those making the decision on the basis of the information we given. Weren't really content with that response because we felt that the proximity of this poultry houses and other agricultural buildings needed further investigation. That's why we went back. And similarly, that's why we have arrived at the consultation response we do have, because ultimately our job is to, I suppose, safeguard the council in terms of not approving dwellings here that are going to suffer residential amenity and lead to subsequent complaints in relation to an existing established business that's been there for a number of years. So yes, there were a number of consultation responses and the variety of those did change over time, but that was in relation to further site inspections and internal sort of discussions between ourselves and Environmental Health. But the most recent one is what we've brought this forward on the basis of tonight.
Okay, Liam, thank you. Christoph, is that clear? Okay, look, members, we've given this a good round of questioning. Sure. Oh, Declan, sorry, I didn't see you there. Here.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, in relation to the agricultural buildings, could you give us details on the size of these buildings? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McAlinden. I'll ask Liam to sort of outline roughly the scale of the agricultural buildings, the size of the poultry house. You know, obviously the scale it is, many chickens is held in it, etc. If you have that information, Liam, thank you.
Yeah, the poultry houses are in excess of 2,000 square metres. The agricultural building to the left of the agricultural site, or to the proposed site that houses cattle, is 400 square metres. The other buildings across the road, are 600 square metres.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Liam. And you know, look, the size, the size you're giving it, they're not overly large buildings, to say the least. You know, I live in a rural area here, and not too far from me, there's large, maybe 10,000 square feet. The poultry houses beside me, and I'm just concerned that like this application for such a small agricultural building that will have such a big issue over noise and smell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McAlinden, but I suppose, point of clarification, I think Liam gave those areas in metres squared, not square feet. So that would make the poultry houses about 20,000 square feet, which would be a similar scale to the ones you've been, you're talking about. We're close to your proximity to yourself. So just for clarification, okay, thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to move on to debate. I don't see any lights on, members. So if that's all the questions addressed, we'll move on to the debate stage. So I'm a member's hands, or does anyone want to sort of declare what their thinking is at this stage? Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I believe what was Councillor Wilson actually pointed out, that there is a lot of mitigation has gone on in these poultry sheds, because it seems to be all based around the poultry sheds and not really the other sheds. So there is mitigation for sound, noise, smell, pollution that really comes out of those. And I had a quick check there, and as was says, it's only guidance, it actually goes down to 100 meters, for free range, and 100 up to 150 meters, and it's only guidance at the minute. So he would be of the mind to go against the officer's recommendation. Sure.
Okay, Councillor Duffy, thank you for that. But obviously, we'll continue the debate here for a wee while longer. Liam, I see your light on. Do you want to address? No. Go on ahead, Liam.
Yeah, no, it was just in a sort of, it never got teased out. There was a point raised by Alderman Anderson there about the sort of council and dealing with these applications previously. Obviously, we've had 3 or 4 of these before the committee on the same grounds, and have been applying this standard and advice to date on a number of applications that have already passed through the committee. So it was just to sort of make members aware of that we have had a number of those.
Okay, Liam, thank you very much for the clarification there. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Liam, for that information. I think most of the members here, we realise that there have been a number of applications through here where noise and pollution and smell and whatever is in place. And I think, quite honestly, as far as I'm concerned, we have to be consistent as a committee to see that we are taken into what we have in front of us from the environmental department. So that's just what I want to say at the present time. We need to be consistent as a committee. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson, thank you. Point taken. Okay, members, we're still in debate. Anybody else want to, or do we move towards decision? Okay, members, look, Councillor McAlinden.
Sorry, Chair.
Sneaked in there.
Just a bit of clarification on the previous applications that Liam had mentioned. Did they all fall just on the noise and odour assessment, or was there other issues that fell on? This application meets all the criteria, PPS 21. So I'm just wondering, did it just fall on the odour and smell, odour and noise assessment? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McAlinden. We're sort of in the debate stage, but I can understand why you've sort of a question has come out of that, and obviously you're in Zoom, so perhaps that you're not sort of had the full sort of detail that's come out in the meeting. Liam, do you want to address that? You referred to a number of applications that this committee has made decisions on, and obviously that creates precedence in the context of where we are. So how similar are those to what we're dealing with in front of us now? Just a clarification to the members. Thank you.
No, I think just as a sort of point of clarification, the previous application on this application site that was refused, the first refusal reason related to having notified the agent that certain pieces of information were necessary to make a determination that those pieces of information were not submitted, namely the noise and odour assessment. And then the second refusal reason is the same refusal reason that we have in front of us tonight, largely in relation to non-compliance with the SPPS. So yes, we didn't ask for them, but I mean, the agents and applicants were fully aware of the previous application on the site and knew that these issues were there and did have an opportunity to submit either a noise, odour or any other assessment in support of their application and chose not to do so. And we're here debating tonight between two different positions, one from our Environmental Health Department and one from the agent. In respect of the other applications that we have gone through, and obviously you can recall that from Muckley, and you can recall our application for the dog kennels, I think it was here 2 months ago. And then we had one last month adjacent to NIE plant, and they're all similar in proximity to sources that are resulting in residential sites that wouldn't be acceptable on amenity grounds. So there's quite a raft of them.
Okay, Liam, sorry if I haven't put you in the spot there, but you've addressed it very well. Oh, does that clarify that for you, Councillor McAlinden?
Thanks, Chair.
Do you recall those?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Liam. Thanks.
Okay, we're still in debate, members. There's no other lights on. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, I don't remember the dog kennel one. I don't think it was here, but last week it definitely wasn't. It was within meters of the electricity site. Now this is over 100 meters away, this site, so I don't see the comparison between them at all. Sure, thank you. And the other one, as you said, 3 or 4, was it 100 meters?
I suppose, Councillor Duffy, in fairness to Liam, you're not going to get one identical to what we have, in relation to that, but I think he's just going to outline in the what members have seen in front of them, and just to give them a wee bit of a recap, just to help them think. But look, appreciate your point there. Okay, members, I'm going to close debate. I'm going to move to decision. If there's no more lights on. Okay, members, I'm going to decision. So I'm in your hands, members. So we need a decision on this one.
I would actually propose we accept the recommendation and grant plan permission.
Okay, Councillor Duffy, thank you. Okay, members, we've got a proposal on the floor that we overturn the recommendation that's in front of us tonight from the planning department, and we grant the approval. Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor McGlynn, see your hand up.
I'll second that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, right. So we've got a proposer and a seconder for that we overturn the decision. I've got another light on here, Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I realise every application comes before, so we should always take all the issues on board and to facilitate within the criteria and everything that we have before us to allow developments to take place, especially in rural areas. But quite honestly, what I've heard from the environmental department and from them, and I do remember a number of those previous applications, and I would say, as I've said before, we need to be consistent here. And I would be proposing that we go with a recommendation on that to refuse permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Anderson. Alderman Twywell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and really I certainly would have some sympathy with the applicants here this evening, but I think it is more important that we are consistent with previous decisions and recommendations, and I would be happy to second the recommendation from my colleague here.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Anderson and Alderman Twywell. So we've got two proposals on the floor, members. So I'm assuming we don't have agreement. So I think at this stage we have to go to a vote. Ruth, do you want to? Okay, members, because we have a hybrid meeting, the vote can't be done electronically. So what I'm going to do is call out the names who's present in this meeting, and you give me your vote, either for, against, or abstain. I'm assuming we take Councillor Duffy's proposal first, which is obviously to overturn the council office decision. So I'm going to go to each member one at a time. You see your light on. Give me your vote, please. Alderman Anderson.
All right. Against, Chair.
Alderman Twywell.
Against.
Councillor Duffy.
For, Chair.
Councillor McAlinden.
For, Chair.
Councillor McLeod.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I know I have concerns, but just on the grounds of consistency and what has happened previously, against.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And I think that's everybody bar myself, and Chair is against. So we'll total those up. Okay, members, that's 2 for and 5 against. So you vote in a second? Or is it just 4? Okay. Okay, members, because it's 2 for, 5 against, we don't need to vote in the second one. So we're now, it's been decided we accept the recommendation by the officer. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the committee, and we'll move on to the next appendix number 2 on the schedule. Okay, members, appendix number 2 is application number LA08 2021 RM. Can we get Councillor Savage back in the room, please? Sorry, I forgot about it. You're very welcome, Councillor Savage. Okay, members, we're moving on now to appendix number 2, which is application number LA08 2021-1232/RM. And the senior planning officer who's going to make a presentation of a report and PowerPoint is going to be Sinead McAvoy. Sinead.
Thank you, Chair. It's reserved matters application for the erection of 12 detached dwellings and associated detached garages. The principle of development has been established on this site through the granting of outline planning permission, LA08 2018-08980, which was for a residential development to include up to 35 dwellings. The matters reserved for consideration under this application is siting, design, external appearance, means of access and landscaping. These are assessed in detail in the main report, but to summarise, officers are content that the development respects the surrounding context and is appropriate to the character and topography of the site in terms of layout, scale, proportions, massing and appearance of buildings, structures and landscaped and hard surface areas. Adequate provision is made for public and private open space and landscaped areas as an integral part of the development. 17 extra heavy standard trees ranging from 4.24 metres to 6 metres in height and 21 heavy standard trees ranging from 3.5 metres to 4.25 metres are to be planted along the rear boundaries of the dwellings and in the front garden areas to provide a tree-lined avenue and so to soften the visual impact of the development and to assist in its integration with the surrounding area. The design and layout will not create conflict with adjacent land uses and there's no unacceptable adverse effect on existing or proposed properties in terms of overlooking, loss of light, overshadowing, noise or other disturbance. Existing planting is retained along the boundaries of the site where applicable and supplementary native species planting is provided. The site's access arrangement is in accordance with DCAN 15 design standards. A new footway will be introduced on Corbett Road fronting the site, connecting to the adjacent footway to the east. Adequate car parking will be provided in Kirtledge and off-street that complies with Creighton Places car parking standards, and the internal layout is fully designed in accordance with the Creighton Place standards. All other considerations, including impact on natural and built heritage and flooding and drainage, has been fully considered in consultation with the competent authorities and no objection has been raised. The third-party representations have been fully considered, including those as per the addendum report. In response to one of the late representation, an additional condition is proposed to ensure the upper floor window to an ensuite room remains opaque glass. Having regard to the above and after undertaking a policy assessment, officers of the opinion that proposed development complies with the Craigavon area plan, the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies, and on that basis and subject to the conditions attached, including the additional one within your addendum report, it is recommended the planning permission be granted. Take me through the PowerPoint presentation. So that's location of the site within the general area. So it's the north of Craigavon area within the development limit of Craigavon urban area. Next slide, please. And that's an aerial view of the site, and that area in red is the area under consideration for these 8 to 12 detached dwellings. Next slide, please. So that's the site location plan showing the red line of the application site, and the land in blue is also on the ownership of the application. Directly to the east is the Corbett manor in which the late representations have been received. And so that's the layout under consideration under this application. You will note there has been 2 previous ones approved to the front of the site, and that development to the east is occupied. So that's the layout plan. It's basically a close-up just to show you the garden provision provided is way in excess of the 70 square metres minimum that we require for such a style of house, 2 or 3 times the size of that. Next slide, please. So those just what the house types are. Some are finished in brick and then others will be finished in render. So there is the Georgian tile hip roof style one is render. And side section, so there to your immediate east is Craigavon Manor, and you can see the separation distance is well in excess of the 20 metres as a guide in the Creighton places. And there's just side sections. The one to the east in this regard are the ones that's fronting the site. So you can see the front portion of the site where the houses have been recently constructed is a slightly higher level. I think it's 0.9 metres higher than the ones to the rear. Next slide, please. And that's a concept master plan provided, which shows an integral open space area will be provided through the centre of the site. The concept shows that it will be still up to 35 detached dwellings as per the outline approval. So that's photograph one. That shows the access to the site is currently constructed and pathways has been provided at each side of it as per the previous reserve matters approval to the front of the site. That just shows the houses along the front facing onto it, and the road has been widened and the footpath link provided. And that just shows the rear. This is where the houses are going to be backing on to those houses. The ones to the east are the ones newly constructed as part of the phase of the outline approval. And further north, you can see in the distance is existing dwellings occupied at Craigavon Manor. That's just a close-up of the ones at Craigavon Manor. You can see the style is smooth render. And this is similar in style, 2-story dwellings. And that just shows on up to the other side of the site to the west. So it's currently a construction site at the present time. Just as another one to the rear of the Craigavon Manor that they're occupied. They set out with this application site and was not approved as part of this outline plan permission. And there's a further one to the north. So that side to the north is the countryside boundary, and you can see maybe in the concept provided a supplementary buffer planting scheme will have to be provided to ensure that there's more the distinction between the urban area and the rural area. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Sinead. And members, as you know, and Sinead's already mentioned, there was an addendum that was circulated before the meeting, which obviously addressed the written representations of objection to the application from Elizabeth Lavery, Stephen and Rebecca Sinton, Jason and Gemma Wilson, and Paul and Jackie Ann McCann. So members have that and have that for consideration. We're joined tonight, this afternoon, members on Zoom, by Judith Poole of APD Architects, who's going to make a representation in support of the application. Judith, can you hear us? Hello, Judith. I can see. You're on mute, Judith. There you go. Can you hear us, Judith?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. And also with Judith is Tim Cousins of Lesbian Consultants. So he's there. He has speaking rights. So if there's any queries, he will address those. Judith, you've got 3 minutes. You'll see the clock. If you want to address the committee, the time will start when you begin to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to represent the applicant, Fair House Developments, for this application. The application is seeking reserve matters permission for the development of lands at Corbett Road, which is located...
Judith, sorry, I'm going to stop you. We can't really hear you. It seems quite bad. Is there any way you can get closer to the mic? And we'll start the timer again.
Yes.
It's very muffled, Judith, I'm afraid.
Sorry, it's maybe the background noise. Is that any better?
Sorry?
Is that any better? Clearer?
Yeah, it's an improvement. Okay, so the clock's back to 3 minutes, Judith. So you go ahead when you begin to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to represent the applicant, Fair House Developments, for this application. The application is seeking reserved matters permission for the development of lands at Corbett Road, which is located within the defined settlement limit of the Craigavon urban area. The application site is subject to an outline application for residential development of up to 35 detached dwellings. The current application addresses the reserved matters for phase 2 of the residential development, comprising 12 detached dwellings. It is therefore considered that the principle of the development of this site is acceptable. The application is supported by a suite of technical reports to address the planning conditions and the outline approval, and to demonstrate the key principles which continue to inform the ongoing development of the site. These include a landscape planting plan, roads and drainage design, street lighting design, an addendum to the flood risk assessment, a construction environment management plan, and a design and access statement, concept master plan, and phasing plan. We note that a number of objections have been received from third parties in relation to the proposals, and we have given these matters due consideration. They include comments relating to the floodplain and reservoir management. The concept master plan from December 2018 had been revised to accommodate a reservoir inundation zone within the site, and the Schedule 10 report for the management of the reservoir was not available at that time. Craigavon Lakes has since been classified as responsibly managed, which has enabled the concept master plan to be reconfigured to propose development within this previously excluded zone. In light of this, our client has reverted to the concept plan for the site, which located the open space centrally within the scheme. The open space will be provided through future phases of the wider development. Separation distance and residential amenity. The eastern boundary of the application site adjoins the proposed agricultural access road. This area is 10 to 15 metres wide and offers a buffer zone to the existing dwellings of Corbett Manor. New native species planting will be provided along this boundary in line with the concept master plan. Ecological impact. The applicant is committed to retaining the existing trees on site, and the council has conditioned that all trees should be retained. Impact on local character. The proposed development is sited behind the phase 1 houses, which front onto Corbett Road, and subsequently will not represent visually dominant or incongruous development. A number of other comments relating to approved development under construction are not considered relevant to the determination of this planning application, and we are fully supportive of the planning officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Judith, thank you. Sorry, your time's up, but if you have anything else, I'm sure that will get addressed during the meeting. So look, Judith, thank you. And as I said, members, Tim Cousins is here from Lisbon Consultants if there's any queries in relation to that aspect of the design. Okay, members, that's the end of our speakers. So we're moving to questions. So I open the floor to members. Okay, Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair, and Sinead, thank you for your report and for the speaker there for the information they provided. Sinead, just in relation to separations distances, it states in the report that will not cause an acceptable adverse impact by way of overlook or loss of visual amenity. Could you just give us a wee idea of the separation distances at maybe the lowest and the furthest point, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Sinead.
Yeah, the closest proposed dwelling to the existing dwellings of Corbett Manor is site 17, and it sets side elevation to rear, and it is 30 metres separation distance, and the finished floor level difference is 1.05. So when you have a rule of thumb of 20 metres, and that's back to back, there's no guidance side to back, it will be well in excess of our standards. We also have to protect the existing our proposed properties as well, and you will know that from the slides, there's a front portion of the site under construction while not occupied. However, these dwellings will sit 35 metres back from those, so it's well in excess of the 20 metres separation distance guidance as per our creating places.
Thank you. Thanks, Sinead. Okay, have enough, Councillor Savage. That's okay. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in, and thank you to Sinead and the other speaker. In terms of the water course that's mentioned in the report, and I certainly get it, that it lies outside of the application site, Sinead, but there was mention that there is a well leave and in brackets, no build zone. Can you give us an idea in terms of the size of that? Thanks, Sinead. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Sinead.
Yeah, the plans depict that as per the guidance in PPS 15, 5 metres well leave. So there's no planting, no building, no structures provided 5 metres of that water course.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLeod. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I know a few of the residents have mentioned the working hours, particularly bank holidays. That's how will it be enforceable to stop them working out of the hours that the state, and how would we go about that?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I'm going to hand over to Sinead, who's a new part of enforcement, so she should be able to address this very much so. Sinead.
Yes, as tied per the outline conditions of this plan approval, there are hours restricting 7:30 to 5:30 during the week and to 1:30 on Saturdays, and not at all on Sundays, bank holidays or public holidays. And as you rightly state, the late representation made reference to the ongoing building work maybe exceeding or not. So enforcement would investigate that. There are legislative powers within our gift to look at those. For example, they could serve a breach of condition notice. So if they don't adhere to the case, we can serve a breach of condition notice on the applicant and agent. Previous experience would say to us that we would write initially and advise them and outline to them what the public holidays are for the year ahead. So they know what the public holidays is, and there's no sort of misinterpretation of that they didn't realise it was a public holiday, and to remind the developer that this development is subject to hours of control regulation. In the interim of this particular development, you would note that we have wrote to the agent architect who's speaking to the night to remind the developer of what the hours of operation are on this particular site. Now, if that was to continue to pursue and they let us know on that there, we will have to use the enforcement powers within our gift to look at that further.
Okay, thank you, Sinead. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, happy enough? Councillor Duffy, yeah? Okay. Any other questions, members? Nope. Okay, look, members, there's no, just checking on Zoom here. No questions. Look, I suppose there's no questions, members. We can move on to the debate stage. So anything burning in members' mind in relation to this application? Councillor Savage.
There's nothing burning in mind, Chair, but it's, as I say, look, as always, it's a very comprehensive report that details the objections on counters as well. So, you know, I don't think there's any real issues with it. I think the decision that the officers arrived at sound, and I'll be mind to accept the recommendation as outlined in the report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's a very, very detailed report, and it's well presented. So, any other members? There's no other. I'm going to move on to the decision. Moving to the decision. Councillor McAlinden.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, and thanks for that report. And I'm happy enough to propose the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McAlinden. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll second Councillor McElveen's proposal to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Okay, members, we've got a proposer and a seconder to accept the recommendation in front of us. So any other proposals? I'm seeing no lights, members, so I'm assuming all agreed? Great. Okay, members, thank you. Thank you, Judith, and thank you, Tim, for appearing in front of the committee this evening, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon stroke evening. Thank you. Okay, members, appendix number 3 is the next on our agenda, which is application number LA08 /2019-0371/0. And before we start, members, I just wanted to declare that I had a meeting with the applicant along with another elected rep, but our discussion was primarily about progressing the application. It wasn't discussing its outcome. So I'm happy to stay on with an open mind. So just let members know and have that recorded. So we're inviting, I think it was Liam again, and Liam McCrum is going to make a presentation and a report for this application. Liam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We'll just take you through a couple of wee points of correction just in the report. First of all, on condition 10, it should actually read the existing natural screenings of the site as indicated in brown on approved plan 01. So that needs to be added in and will be added in. In respect of condition 15, it talks about any approved package plan shall be decommissioned and development connected to the public sewer within 6 months of the council notifying the applicant. That should read the owner of the property. There are 2 little anomalies that make reference to condition 13 when it actually should read condition 14 on pages 14 and pages 16 of the report. So bearing all that in mind, I'll just take you through the presentation. This application seeks outline planning permission for a site for dwelling and garage and lands north of 12 lawns within the settlement limit of Warrenstown. The reason application before members has attracted 4 more objections and has been recommended for approval. The site, as stated, is located within the settlement limit of Warrenstown, set out in the local area plan. The listed Warrenstown House is located to the north and Warrenstown Cricket Club to the west. The site is located within Warrenstown Historic Park Garden and Domain. In terms of the principle of development, the site is not located on any land zoned for any particular type of development within the development limits of Warrenstown as defined in the local area plan. It can be considered to be white land. The area plan states that in Warrenstown, single dwelling units of an appropriate design will normally be permitted on suitable sites within the settlement, provided the proposal does not prejudice the comprehensive development of adjacent land. The SPPS encourages and promotes more sustainable housing development within urban areas. However, the SPPS also states, and in policy OS1, that development that would result in the loss of open space, irrespective of its physical condition or appearance, will not be permitted. In this instance, the applicant claims single farm payment on the application site and is therefore considered to be agricultural and therefore not open space. So in essence, the erection of the dwelling in this site is therefore considered to be acceptable in principle, subject to norming planning and environmental considerations being complied with. So in terms of design, layout and amenity, the assessment and consideration of the plan merits of proposed development is informed by the SPPS, Craigavon Area Plan, PPS 7, the addendum to PPS 7, PPS 12, creating places and DCAN 8. Officers have set out in detail in the body of the report how the proposed development complies with each of the relevant policies in the local area plan. In terms of traffic, access and parking considerations, officers in consultation with DFI Roads are satisfied that a satisfactory means of access and sufficient space within the curtilage can be provided for parking and turning. In terms of the impact on the historical environment, officers in consultation with HED are satisfied that the proposal does not adversely impact on the historic designated landscape of Warrenstown House and is in compliance with the SPPS and policy BH6. HED are also content in principle that the proposal satisfies the SPPS and BH4 PPS 6 policy requirements, subject to conditions for agreement and implementation of a developer-funded programme of archaeological works and a mitigation strategy focusing on the historic garden remains within the site. Historic Development Division have raised no concerns in regard to any adverse impact on the listed building of Warrenstown House. So in that regard, officers are satisfied the proposal complies with the SPPS policy BH11. In terms of other environmental considerations, there is no capacity within Warrenstown Wastewater Treatment Works for sewage from a disposed dwelling, meaning that the proposal will involve non-main sewage disposal. Officers are satisfied that the imposition of condition number 14 ensures that the applicant must submit to the council approved details of a means of sewage treatment prior to any development taking place. Consideration of the third-party representations are set out in detail in the report, and approval is recommended subject to conditions. If we can take you through the PowerPoint. So this is the location of the site within the settlement limit of Warrenstown. You can see it's just located at the back of the Lawns residential development. This is our site location plan with the site outlined in red. This was an indicative site concept submitted by the applicant for information purposes only. This is our suggested siting condition that's alluded to within the officer's report. So an aerial photograph of the site and its surroundings. You can see the cricket pitch and the development limit of the lawns to the front and the main road there that runs through the centre of the village. This is just an enlarged version of the application site. You can see the section of the brown area just immediately at the rear and side of the existing dwellings. That's the application site. So this is our view from the lawns, looking towards the site. Our site is at the top of the street there, at the back of the residential development. Again, this is a view looking into the site. You can see the dwellings to the left and the right and the gap immediately in front of you. That's the point of entry to the access of the site. That is the dwelling under construction to the left-hand side of the site. That's actually the large two-storey detached garage of that site. This is just a view within the site. You can see it's become largely overgrown. Again, another view within the site, just looking towards one of the boundaries. And again, another view looking across the site. You can see it's become overgrown. That's a view towards the shared boundary with number 12, the lawns, which is at the back of the existing housing development. And you can see some of the mature trees in the foreground. And again, a further view of the shared boundary. And again, you can see some of the mature trees and the overgrown nature of the site. That's just looking from within the site back towards the dwelling that's currently under construction. That building without the roof is actually a two-storey detached garage that basically screens the dwelling itself from the current application site as before, members. And again, that's just a view from the application site looking out past the detached garage towards what is the Warrenstown Cricket Club. And again, that's our view from the garage under construction at the new site looking in towards the site, and you can see one of the pillars of that property that just is the boundary with the access to the application site. And you can see some of the fencing and level difference involved there. That's us. Yeah, that's the existing greenhouse that's part of one of the back boundaries of the application site. Thank you.
Okay, Liam, thank you very much for your report and presentation. Members, we're due to have two speakers. However, we've received a message from Cara Lockett MP. She's not going to be able to make it, so she's not going to be attending the meeting via Zoom. But we do have Mr. Michael Harnett, who's going to make a representation in support of the application. Mr. Harnett, can you hear me? You're on mute, Mr. Harnett. That's it. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Look, Michael, you're very welcome to the committee, and you've got 3 minutes. You see a timer in front of you, so it'll commence when you begin to make your presentation. So,
thank you very much. I have very little to add at this point. I agree, obviously, with the planners. I add perhaps that this was part of the application site that I originally made back in 1989. The majority of that site was within the 4 or 5 acres that I actually approved. The 2 or 3 acres I got to build the whole lawns. And this was like an unfinished end. It closes the lawns off completely and seals the lawns off as an identity on its own. Interestingly, at those dates in 2000, the sewage actually went right up into the site and was done because I put the sewers for the whole site in. So I have agreed and I am putting in a separate septic tank because I haven't got the paperwork to show that it was there, but it's already in there. And as soon as the paperwork can be completed, it can be connected into the existing manhole that was built in 2000. I think that's all I need to add. It is to the benefit, and thank you. I'll close my time early. In case there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harnett, and we're going to move on to questions now. So the members may have questions for you. I'm going to open it to the floor here to members. So, okay, members, any questions? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. It's one for Mr. Harnett. Just in relation to one of the objectors, one of the queries that raises that there's going to be plans for more sites on this, and I know it's not a material consideration in this particular application, but you did say that this is to, I think, you bookend the site and finish it off. Will this be the last site or last build on the site? Would you be able to clarify that?
That site goes to the cricket to the...
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Mr. Harnett, did you hear that?
I did, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is the top of the site adjacent to my gardens, and yes, it is the end of the road, the end of the development at that end of the site, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Harnett. Happy enough? Yep. Okay, Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thank you for letting me in, and thank you to Liam and to Mr. Harnett for their presentations. In terms of the third-party representations, a couple of issues I want to raise. There seems to be some confusion regarding whether there have been trees removed from the site or not. So could we have a little bit of clarity around that issue, please? And then the other thing, Chairman, in terms of the biodiversity checklist and who completed that and what status that has, please. Could we have some clarity around those issues, please? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McClelland. Liam, do you want to? Liam's going to address that, and then obviously Mr. Harnett will help if Liam leaves any blanks. Okay, Liam.
Yeah, Chair. I suppose the role of the plan department was to assess the application as we found it on the day of submission of the application. So basically from our site inspection, we didn't find any trees to be removed in that section of the site that may have carried out previously. Mr. Harnett can perhaps elaborate on that, but certainly from the date of site inspection, we didn't pick any of that up. In the second aspect of the biodiversity checklist, we were happy that was completed by someone who was competent, and that was reviewed by NIEA, and they raised no objection in that regard. So we're content with both.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Ms. Hart, have you anything to add to what Liam just said to Councillor McLeod's question, or are you happy with what Liam has said?
I suppose I can add a little bit. There was a hedgerow at the back of the greenhouses. In fact, I restored those greenhouses about 40 years ago, and then look at the state of them and back into again now. But that hedge had grown up to being fairly tall. And on the basis of that, that was cut down to the normal hedge height, as can be seen on the site at the moment. But no trees were cut at that stage.
Really?
As for the original checklist, the original checklist on the application was done by my daughter, who got her degree in agriculture and then went on to do her MSc in estate management and land management on exactly this topic. But after the concern of a couple of residents, I got Dermot Hughes, I think was his name, I need to confirm that, who was the chairman of one of the Ulster Wildlife and eminently capable of giving the full report. And that was the official application that went in at the end.
We both said the same.
And they both agreed.
Okay, look, thank you, Mr. Hornet, and I think Liam's clarified that the biodiversity checklist has been accepted and checked and accepted. So thank you for clarification. Councillor McLeod? Yeah, happy enough. Okay, members, any other questions? Members, I'm seeing no lights on. If there's no more questions, members, I'm happy to move to the debate. Yeah, okay. Moving to debate, members. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm broadly happy enough with the proposal and the reports. Very good, Liam. Thank you. No, just had concerns. Just thought it was very unusual. One house on the end of a sort of pre-planned estate is going to have a septic tank while the rest are all piped into the main sewers. I was just really concerned about that, and I want to know, was it commonplace for things like that? But it's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Dublin. I suppose it is a strange one in that respect, but I suppose the way NI Water is the minute, you can't get connection from one house into the mains, never mind a number of houses. And I know Warringstown is one of those areas which is very difficult to develop in because there is a restriction at the minute. So that's probably why I would say they would prefer to go into the mains, but probably not allowed. That's probably what's happened. Okay, members, any other debate? No? Okay, look, members, I'm happy to move to decision. Councillor Duffy.
Happy enough to propose the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duffy, Alderman Twywell.
I'm very happy to second the proposal.
Okay, look, thank you, Councillor Duffy and Alderman Twywell. Members, we've got a proposal to accept the recommendation as seconder. Any other proposals on the floor? Members, I'm seeing no lights on. All agreed? Great. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hornet. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Okay, members, moving on. You leaving? Right. But a canvas to do something, yeah? Right. Okay, members, moving on. Appendix number 4, it's application LA 08 2019 0789/F, and we're handing over to Sinead McAvoy, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Chair. The site is located within the settlement limit and consists of part of a side garden to the east of number 57 Irwin Drive and an overgrown scrubland situated between the existing dwelling and an open watercourse. The plan identifies the site as whiteland, so it's not subject to any specific land use zoning. Plan policy set 1 and HOU 1 of CAP 2010 operates a presumption in favour of housing development in such areas, subject revealing regional planning policy and all other material considerations. The SPPS and PPS 7 advocates an increased housing density in urban areas without town cramming. In light of this proposal, officers are content the proposed density of the additional dwelling, together with its form, scale, mass and layout, will respect local character and environmental quality, as well as safeguarding the amenity of existing residents. The road is proposed to be extended to allow the construction of the new access for this dwelling and to facilitate a level of communal parking. A new 2-metre footpath will also be extended around the new road access, and 3 number of in-courtless parking spaces will be provided. All the proposed development is outside of the floodplain. The designated watercourse which flows along the eastern boundary of the site is protected by a 5-metre working strip to facilitate future access to this watercourse. In respect of policy FLD3, development and surface water, the flood hazard map indicates the site is not located within a protected flooded area. You'll note within the report, it's the word not is in it, so that's quite important. It's not located within a particular flooded area as indicated in the surface water flood map, and for a reason a drainage assessment is not required by the policy. Following consultation with Rivers Agency, officers are satisfied the proposed development will not raise any detrimental or adverse impact upon drainage or flood risk matters. All third-party representations have been fully considered and the necessary amendments have been made through the processing of this planning application. Having regard to the above and after undertaking a policy assessment and plan and balancing exercise, officer of the opinion the proposed development complies with the area plan, the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies. On that basis and subject to the conditions attached, it is recommended that planning permission be granted. I'm taking you through the PowerPoint presentation. There's a site in the general locality, so it's the south of Lurgan within the development limit. And that's an aerial view of the proposed site at the end of the cul-de-sac at Erin Drive. And that's the site location plan. It just shows the area in relation to the overall Craigavon area plan. So you see it's white land, so it's undesignated, unzoned land within the development limit. So it's a proposed site layout in relation to the existing dwellings to the west. And that's the proposed house type. And the floor plans, you'll note there's no upper side elevation windows overlooking 57. There's proposed sections through the site. So the closest residential is to the rear at Glen Sheehan, and it's over 24 metres rear to the side elevation separation distance. And that shows the top is the existing contextual elevation treatment, and then the bottom will show how it'll look like in that street elevation. And then that's the boundary treatment to the rear. You'll note one of the objections were worried about how the boundary fence was going to look. So it's going to be double-sided fence so that the good side is on both sides, so to speak. So there's the access to the site. So that is some of the objections related to their park their car there. So that's going to be extended out, and that car or that footpath on the left-hand side will be extended right around it. So that's going to be extended by 2.4 metres to allow a level of communal parking there to be retained. That's just looking up to the site that's sort of closed off at the present time. You can see as part of the side yard and then overgrown scrubland. And so there's a small substation to the front of the site, and then the car parking is going to be beyond that. And then this area to the south of that substation is going to be extended to allow for a new area of communal parking for the existing residents in Erin Drive. And that's just looking back up from the site, just looking towards the other side of the, just it gives you what the house types are like there. They're semi-detached red brick dwellings. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Sinead, for your report and presentation. Members, with no other people speaking on this application, so we're going straight to questions. So is there any other questions for Sinead on this application? Sinead, I'll ask you a question because I do remember an application like this before, and obviously the majority of houses around it are semis, and this is a detached. You're not concerned this is a change in character of the locality, as this is as a totally different. And you see Roisin laughing beside you because she remembers the one I'm talking about. So if you could just address that question, Sinead, thank you.
So maybe if Ruth could bring up the site location plan. This is a good question, and believe you me, this was quite a long debate amongst ourselves as regards to the character and taking into consideration, say, Planning Appeals Commission and how do you assess character. So basically, you look at what is in the environment of around the site. So maybe I suppose just to take it through the site location plan might be easier for those that's maybe not too familiar with the site location plan, if you can, please, Ruth. Yes, there. And so immediately at Irwin Drive are semi-detached red brick dwellings exclusively along Irwin Drive. Going out there to the east end at Irwin Gardens, there's a mixture of semi-detached and detached. However, if you look, bring that in even closer, we're talking about, as the PSC do, to be fair, the immediate, environment, immediately rear to this site are detached properties. And if that wasn't the case, we probably would be looking at this potentially out of character. But for us to stand there with the Planning Appeals Commission and say this was out of character, when looking at me, your detached properties, both to the rear and to the right of that, I don't think we would be on, we would have thinking, but definitely character is one of those things that we did look at. In relation to building line and that as well, or in place if it was immediately up that road, yes, but you can't see this. You have to go right down and front the site before you see it. So that all has to be in the package as well. So yes, it's a very good question, and it is one that is the immediate environs. And if there were semi-attached to the rear and to the side of that, potentially, yes, we would be looking at the character. But in light of that, we went to the presumption as carried in the Craigavon area plan to presumption in favour of housing in these urban areas, and that carried the determinant weight in this case.
Thanks, Sinead. I knew you could answer that one. So. Very good. Okay, Councillor McLaren.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in, and thank you, Sinead, for the usual detailed report. I think you mentioned about the presence of a substation in the vicinity of the site. Can I ask, and I mean, excuse me or forgive me if I missed it in the report, I mean, is that an NIE or is that NI water or whatever? Because I don't see in the statutory consultees list where any of them have made any comment. So it's just for clarity as to what it is. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sinead.
Thanks, Councillor McLeod. I think it's NIE, but Sinead, do you want to clarify that?
Yes, it is an NIE electrical substation, and that's not, it's been untouched, so it's staying as it is. And there actually is going to be a 1.8 metre high fencing around it to protect it from any abuse. We've also consulted environmental health in relation to the proximity of the dwelling in that regard as well.
Thanks, Sinead, and thank you, Councillor McLeod. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a similar vein to Councillor McLeod. Is there any means of access for NIE staff to get into the substation? Is that in the foot? I was looking at the picture there, I'm not clear. Is that in the footprint of the site, the substation? And will they just be able to get into it as and when required, or can the owner say no, you're not getting in here? Or anything like just for information purposes?
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Sinead, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, the application approved would actually be easier access to the substation because the road has been extended and there's a new 2 metre footpath will actually come right out towards the front of this now. So you'll actually be able to walk to it, while previously it's sort of like a scrubland and overgrown, but that will not be closed off. If this were to be granted, it'd probably be easier to get access to that substation now.
Thank you, Sinead. Happy enough? Okay, members, any other questions for Sinead? I think, we're happy to move on to debate. Yeah, move on to debate. Okay, members, we're in debate. Suppose I'll start off and say this is, as Sinead said, it's a very, very detailed report, and it's pretty clear, and it's been well presented this evening, and I think it's. We're always worried about these ones, these garden. I think this one actually does work quite well. So. Anybody else? No? Okay, I move to decision, members. Councillor Wilson.
I propose accordingly. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, happy to second the proposal that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McLennan. Okay, members, we've got a proposer and a second to accept the recommendation. Any other proposals from the floor? Okay, members, I'm seeing no lights. Therefore, with proposing a second, all agreed? Agreed. Okay. Thanks, members. We'll move on to the next one. Is appendix number 5, and it's application number LA08 2021-07-04/F, and the Senior Planning Officer who's making the presentation of the report and PowerPoint is Trudy Chapman. Trudy?
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full plan permission for the erection of 9 apartments in the Limestone Square development located on the Rock Road in Armagh. It's before you this evening as objections have been received from more than 4 postal addresses. Members are advised that the application site lies within the development limit for Armagh City as designated in the Armagh Area Plan. Permission for phase 2 of the Limestone Square development granted approval for 48 dwellings and 50 2-bed apartments, with the majority of the apartments to be built along the southern end of the development. Since then, further permissions have been granted, which has changed some of these apartments to semi-detached dwellings, the layout of which means the remainder of the apartments can no longer be built as approved. The application before you seeks to build a block of 9 apartments located to the southeastern corner of the public open space and will mirror an existing apartment block which is located in the northeast corner of the same open space. The building is to be 3-storey, finished in smooth render with a hip slate roof, and will have 3 apartments on each floor. An area of parking is to be provided, as are grassed areas of communal open space. 8 letters of objection have been received from 6 postal addresses. The comments made can be summarised as increased traffic, insufficient parking, access to neighbouring property, loss of light, impact on privacy, adverse impact on property values, that all residents should have been informed of the proposal, and concerns over who the occupants will be. These objections have been considered in the report previously circulated. Members are advised that the consultation responses received were favourable. Officers are therefore of the opinion that the proposal meets the policy requirements of the SPPS, PPS 7 and its addendum, and all other relevant planning policies and supplementary guidance. And on this basis, officers recommend that members approve the proposal subject to the conditions set out in the report. And then I'll just take you through the PowerPoint, please. So that's our location of the site within the general area. We're in the southwest corner of Armagh City. Next slide, please. So this is our application site. So you can see there the layout of Limestone Square with the open space there in the centre of it. Next slide, please. So this is an aerial photograph. The area to the bottom right of the development is our application site. It's the one element that hasn't been developed yet. Next slide, and that's a close-up just to show you the site in question. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the middle of the open space, looking back down towards the site, and it'll be in the gap there, just slightly to the left of the centre of the photograph there. Next slide, please. So this is looking into the site. To the right, we have number 67 and 69 to the rear, and 63 and 65 to the front. 67, 69, and 63 all objected to the proposal. Next slide, please. So this is from within the site, looking back sort of to the northeast. So the White House on the elevated site is actually on the Rock Road. And then the house, red brick house there at the front is 59, who also objected to the proposal. This slide then shows the other apartment block. So this is in essence the mirror of what we're looking at tonight. It'll be finished the same, broadly look the same, and it's very much the same in terms of its relationship to the houses on either side. Next slide, please. So these are just an indication of which properties had objected to the proposal. Next slide, please. So these are our proposed elevations. As you can see, it's broadly similar to the one that has already been built. Next slide, please. Those are our floor plans. Next slide. That's our layout. So you'll see that we have an area of car parking. It has been designed in such a way that it's closest to the houses that back onto it. We've also got areas for bin storage, and we have an area at the entrance to the development where they can put their bins out on bin collection day to make sure that it's kept neat and tidy. Next slide, please. So those are our bin stores. And this slide and the next show our sections through the proposal. Next slide then is our housing density. So we're looking at the actual development itself and the three nearest ones to it. The one on the right, you'll see that the bottom one in pink is our application site. The one in green is the other apartment that has been built. And while they're both irregular shapes, they both do measure 0.1 hectare. So again, there's another similarity with that element. Next slide, please. And this is an extract then from the previously approved scheme. So this was what was going to be built in the bottom right corner. As you can see, it was a large block. The nature of how it has been designed is that you can't divide it in two. Had you been able to take it right down the middle, you actually would have been able to build half of that as it is. So that's just to give you an idea as to what had originally been planned for the bottom end of the site. And that should be us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trudy. Okay, members, again, there's no one else to speak on this application, so I'm open to questions. Okay, members have no lights on, but Trudy, I'll ask one question. See on section BB, obviously the back of the apartments are very close to quite a steep slope. How are they dealing with that landscape-wise? Because I know if I lived in one of those apartments, I wouldn't want to look out on the, it's quite steep. Is there some sort of landscape type retaining structure there, or what is it? Just no detail there. Thanks.
Thank you. It's actually a rock face. This site used to be a quarry. So it's Armagh limestone. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a retaining wall of nature, as it were. So you can see it on some of the photographs that it's been quarried to a fairly straight rock face, and it'll just be left like that.
Okay, Trudy, thanks for that clarification. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thank you for that, man, and thank you, Trudy, for the presentation. Yeah, just a very quick one in terms of sort of clarity. You did say, and I'm looking at the photograph taken from Limestone Square showing the existing apartment block. You did say that what is proposed now is a mirror image of what we have in this picture, in terms of the white building in the corner.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod. Trudy, yeah.
They are broadly similar. They're broadly similar in terms of height, scale, how many apartments is in it, window positioning to the neighbours. There may be some minor differences, but they're broadly the same.
Okay, thank you, Trudy, and thank you, Councillor McLeod. Any other questions, members? Don't see any lights on. I'm going to move on to debate with this one. So no lights on. I suppose, in my opinion, I think it actually finishes the development quite well if it matches what is there. So, and it does make sense when you look at it. But Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, Chair, at the risk of maybe straying into the next stage, so happy to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
I think the risk is you did stray into that next stage. But no, look, we'll accept it. I think there was no really, I was prolonging the debate, I think. But look, we've got a proposal there from Councillor McLeod, and I've got a seconder to that proposal. Councillor Wilson.
I'll second that proposal, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay, members, we've got a proposal from Councillor McLeod, a seconder from Councillor Wilson to accept the recommendation. Any other proposals on the floor? Seeing no lights, members, so all agreed? Great. Okay, members, thank you very much. And now we're moving on to our last application, which is Appendix 6, application number LA08 2021 0378/F. And Sinead's been busy tonight. It's another one for her, who's a senior planning officer, who's going to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Sinead.
Thank you, Chair. This is the construction of the Northern Ireland section of the cross-border Ulster Canal Greenway from O'Connell Bridge on the border at the River Core, west of number 13347 Monaghan Road, to Anagola Bridge in Middletown. And the application falls in the major category of development, and also is an application which is made by the council. The development proposal consists of the creation of a 5 metre wide corridor, which incorporates a pathway up to 3 metres wide and a drainage buffer verge up to 1 metre wide on each side. The pathway will consist of an unbound granular surface course of gravel and dust. The ancillary structures include the erection of approximately 1.2 metre high timber post and rail fencing between the greenway and private land, adapted to be stock-proof fencing where it's adjacent to agricultural grazing land, and the erection of 1.2 metre high screening adjacent to residential developments. In addition to improving connectivity between communities on both sides of the border, the greenway is intended to encourage active travel in preference to vehicular transport and promote the area as a walking and cycling tourist destination. The SPPS recognises that networks of green spaces, commonly referred to as green infrastructure, provide a wide range of environmental benefits in both these rural and urban locations, and can provide opportunities for social interaction by serving as a focal point for recreation and community activities. This green infrastructure are designed and management as a multifunctional resource capable of delivering a wide range of environmental and quality of life to the benefits of all communities. Officers note there's an error in the paragraphs at page 13 relates to the Newry Road. The car park has been designed based on a worst case scenario on the arrival of 2 cars per hour, and assumed an average stay of 2 hours would be 6 cars. A total of 19 car parking spaces, which also includes 1 disabled space, are being provided within the car park and will provide further robustness to mitigate risk of an overcapacity event occurring. Officers confirm the access cannot reasonably be attained from an adjacent minor road due to the existence of the Core River, and there is no existing vehicular access at this location. The proposal therefore fails to satisfy Annex A of PPS 21. Policy CTY1 states that other types of development will only be permitted where there are overriding reasons why the development is essential and could not be located in a setting limit. The car park is located here, and this is the start of the Greenway proposal. Officers are of the opinion that the need and location of this car park is essential to the overall project, providing a location for the new car parking facilities, bike rack, picnic area and a water refill station, and as such there are overriding reasons why the development is essential here and could not be located in a setting limit. DFI Roads advised that should council plan to consider the principle of access to this protected route to be acceptable, the detail of what is proposed is acceptable, and as such they would not have any significant objection to this proposal. The proposal is to use the existing canal banks as a greenway for cyclists and pedestrians and to follow the canal where practical. The canal bed and associated structures have become overgrown with vegetation since the closure. The proposed scheme incorporates several extant structures that are entered into the Historic Environment Division's Industrial Heritage Record. The scheme will also provide the potential to impact the remains of the canal itself and on below ground remains of former canal structures and other industrial heritage remains, and as such a heritage impact assessment was required. This has been undertaken and the report surveyed the existing remaining historic structures along this route to assess the impact of the proposed greenway. Overall, the proposed scheme will have no negative impact on industrial heritage and historic structures and will generally improve the setting of the historic assets by improving the visibility of the structures and the readability of the canal heritage in this setting. An ecological impact assessment and habitat regulation assessment were also submitted in support of this application, and as set out in the addendum of the report, NID are content with the proposal. No third-party representations have been received. Having regard to the above and after undertaking a policy assessment and plan and balancing exercise, officer of the opinion the proposed development complies with the area plan, the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies, and on that basis and subject to the conditions attached, it is recommended the planning permission be granted. Taking it through a PowerPoint presentation. That's the location of the site. So it's to the south of Middletown, so it's just north of the border of Monaghan. And that red line gives an overview roughly. So it roughly follows the old canal route, and that's the Monaghan Road there to the right-hand side. And that's the location of the site within the general area. That's the site location plan provided. And that's proposed layout. You see that there's 4 rectangles, so there's 4 stages, which will take you through it and give you a close-up of what's being proposed. So that's sheet 1. So that's coming out of the Middletown area, and that's the closest one that's going to be to a residential receptor, but it's an existing footpath will be extended. And that is sheet 2, and you can see the river cord to the north there. So it's basically following that route. And that's the third sheet, so it's basically a gravel footpathway. And then sheet 4, that's the last, was taking you into a new car park to the north of the site, just below Middletown. And that just shows the car parking arrangement layout. So it's been 19 car parking spaces, picnic area, and it's been designed to ensure that all vehicles can come in and out safely. So it just shows the areas of archaeological historic interest along the way. So it's been designed to sort of increase the visibility of these structures that will hopefully pass on the route. So that's the Foydoff Bridge seen from the north. So it will take you through that, and proposed works will be repointing, and the stability of that will be looked at as well. And that's just at the start, actually. Our Connell Duct, you come off the Monaghan Road there, and that's existing. So you will start the route by going over the top of that. And that's just basically the greenway adjacent to the Monaghan Road. So that was the former Martin's Bridge for those that would know locally. And that's the canal lock. So it'll be going through the each side of that, and the vegetation removal. And there was some reprofiling there of the land to ensure that it's level throughout. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Sinead, for your report and presentation. Okay, members, again, there's no one else to speak on this. So any questions? No, it doesn't look like there's any question. Sheena, can I ask a question? In relation to the car parking area, what way is it secured? You know, I'm just looking at the thing. There doesn't seem to be. Is there any gates? You know, sort of is it open all the time? What way is it? Is the proposal? Or is there a height barrier or anything like that?
Do you want me to? Yeah. No, there's no barriers or access to it. There's going to be a new railing across the front of it. The existing hedgerow there is to be set back, and there's a railing to the rear of it. But there's no gates or barriers to the front of the site. No.
So it's relatively open.
Yeah.
So, and is it private? I'm assuming it's private. It'll be owned by council, will it?
Yeah, the council is working with the Monaghan Council, so it's a cross-border initiative, and it's not been adopted by roads.
Okay, that's right. Okay, thanks, Sinead. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thank you, and thank you, Sinead, for the presentation. And yeah, it's a kind of maybe following on in the same vein as your couple of questions, Chair, and that's and it might not be within the remit of this committee, but just I would be interested in terms of any insurance implications in terms of adjacent landowners and so on and so forth. But as I say, I totally realise that might be out with our responsibility this evening. But anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of the angle I was going, but I think it's an estates thing. Councillor McLeod, we can speak to whoever in the estates to make sure that obviously that it was in council ownership, that we're in control of it, and etc. So, look, are you happy enough, Councillor McLaren? Okay, right. Okay, any other questions, members? No. Okay. Look, I don't see any lights, members. So I'm going to move on to debate, members. So again, I'm not saying lights, but I suppose from so there's Councillor Duffy. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, Chair, just leaning towards it. Good report, and it's good to see the council having a good news story in the area and allowing people access to get in and out and get out and about, and parking that they can access it rather than the walkway outside Portadown, which had an awful difficulty for a long time about parking and still probably does, and it's very well used. And I'd say this, once it's complete, will be.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy, and I have to agree with you. I think you'd expect to see parking with it, because during COVID and the lockdown, I think everybody took to walking, and it was like there was people parking everywhere in different locations. So, Councillor McNally.
Yeah, just a similar vein to Councillor Duffy, Mr. Chairman. I think the only thing that I would have liked to see was that the Greenway continuing right to the village. You know, it just does stop short. But I suppose when my councillor hat on it, I do recognise it has the potential to revitalise that area. But from a planning point of view, you know, again, Sinead has produced a very good report there, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, Councillor McNally, I'd agree with you. It's great, but it's a start. Let's put it that way. And it obviously ticks a lot of boxes: sustainable travel, and you know, health and well-being, people out walking, and the potential of this being some sort of, like, you know, for tourists and things, you know, just out and about, as you say, it'll hopefully revitalise and help, you know, Middletown Village going forward. So, okay, members, debate. I'm going to close. I'm going to go to decision. Councillor McNally.
I propose the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McNally. Councillor Duffy.
Happy to second the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor McNally, Councillor Duffy. Members, I've got a proposer and a seconder to accept the recommendation. Any other proposals? Okay, members, I'm seeing no lights on. All agreed? Okay, members, thank you very much. So thanks, everybody. That's the end of May's planning meeting. I want to thank all the planning office for their presentations, for the reports. I know there's a lot of work in getting those together. I want to thank our legal advisor. Anne had a lot to do today, but there's other days you have on, and obviously the council staff for enabling a very smooth meeting. So, okay, members, enjoy the rest of your evening. You're going out and knock a few doors, thelastminute.com. But in my opinion, I think people decide who they're voting for already, but there you go. All the best, members. Thank you.